With the fire, oh, geez, that's hot. Whew. Feel like I'm losing leg hairs. Hey guys, welcome to Mad Scientist BBQ. I'm Erica Yoder. Today I'm going to answer a question I get all the time. When it comes to offset smokers, how do you run the damper on your stack and the intake on your Firebox? These two aspects of fire management might not seem like a big deal, but really when it comes to offset smokers, they are a huge deal. Running your damper correctly and running the intake to your Firebox correctly are absolutely critical to making great barbecue because they involve temperature control, smoke flavor, and evenness of cooking. In terms of barbecue, a lot of times people are focused on the sauce or the rub or all kinds of minutia that aren't really all that important. But using your damper and your Firebox intake correctly are going to be the difference between making okay barbecue and making great barbecue, because those two things have multiple effects. It's going to affect the smoke flavor that you get. It's going to affect the bark formation that you have, and then it's going to affect the evenness of cooking across your smoker. When it comes to running your offset smoker, you have really only two inputs besides the fire itself. So you can add more logs, you can rearrange the logs inside the Firebox, but apart from that, there are really only two places where you can make adjustments. So the first one I want to talk about is the damper on the stack. The damper affects the airflow. So on offset smokers, airflow is absolutely key. You want enough airflow, but not too much. You want enough so that you can burn your fire in open flame, but you don't want too much so that it's a really harsh cooking environment. Because on an offset smoker, we're not just talking about temperature, we're talking about heat transfer. Because the more air molecules that pass by a piece of meat that you're cooking, the more heat gets transferred even at the same temperature. These two inputs are incredibly important and they are related. One will affect the other. But I think the most effective way and the most helpful way to think about them is think about them operating independently. You adjust one for one purpose and you adjust the other for a different purpose. And I'm gonna go over both of those in just a second. You guys know how much I love barbecue, and learning how to run your damper properly and the intake to your Firebox properly are going to be critically important for that. But I also really love coffee, and I want to tell you about Cometeer. I've been using Cometeer for several months. We've been subscribed and we've been getting boxes of this delicious coffee. If you don't know what Cometeer is, it is the most convenient way to get coffee that tastes absolutely delicious. If you guys know me, I hate going to coffee shops because I wait in line to pay for overpriced coffee that I don't even really like. With Cometeer, I have coffee that I absolutely love. It conveniently shows up at my house, and it's cheaper than going to a coffee shop to get coffee. It is an absolute no-brainer. For you guys out there who love barbecue, you know that there are levels to the barbecue game. There are people who take time and they pay attention to details and they take pains to make sure that they make the absolute best barbecue out there. With Cometeer, there are coffee nerds who do the same thing for you. They brew the coffee at the perfect temperature. They roast the beans perfectly. They source them from the best areas, and they've done all the work to make sure you get a great cup of coffee every morning. Cometeer is flash frozen in capsules, so it's already been brewed perfectly. All you have to do to have a delicious cup of coffee is take the capsule out of the box, run it under hot water for a second, dump it into your favorite mug, and add hot water. Boom, you're ready to go. Or if you like iced coffee, you can use this by thawing it in the fridge, and you don't have to dilute your coffee to make amazing iced coffee. It's the peak of convenience and quality all wrapped in one. Here's the best part. Right now you get 25% off your first two orders if you go to Cometeer.com and use code Mad Scientist. That's code Mad Scientist for 25% off. You're not going to regret it. The coffee is so darn good that you're never going to go back. I want to thank Cometeer for sponsoring today's video and giving my viewers 25% off their first two orders if you use code Mad Scientist. Go check it out. You'll be glad you did. With that being said, I think it's important to know that I already have had 2 cups of Cometeer coffee, so I'm ready to go. Let's jump into talking about the stack and the damper on top of it. Behind me is my 1,000-gallon smoker. It's actually 1,150 gallons. We have a nice big tall stack with lots of draw, which can be helpful, but if you don't know how to use it properly, it can actually make your barbecue worse. And so on this one, because there's so much airflow, I actually take the damper and close it about 2/3 of the way down because I want to reduce the airflow, have gentler cooking, and I want to even out the temperatures. The best way to think about what a damper does in terms of evening out the temperatures is imagine you have your offset smoker and you flipped it upside down. And instead of burning wood and the heat and smoke going through the smoker, imagine you're pouring water in one end. Now, to have the water even out inside the main cook chamber, you'd close the damper on the stack because that would make the water level rise and you kind of have it more even. You reach kind of an equilibrium point. The same thing happens, but kind of in an inverted form with the smoke and heat when you're running your smoker. So closing down the damper evens out temperatures from left to right. So I'm going to show you what happens to the temperatures on this smoker when I open the damper all the way up versus when I have it closed down. We're going to take a look at the temperature between different gauges and you'll see visually what I'm talking about. So with the stack wide open, we've got air whipping through there, so it's really harsh airflow. And here's the other thing, we have very uneven temperatures. Right here is about where I'd start putting things on the racks to start cooking, and we're just under 400 degrees. The next one, over here we're about 350, over here just under 300, and then right here about 275. So that's a huge difference, where basically 400 to 275, that's 125 degrees difference in that span. Now, let me close this stack down about 2/3 of the way or 3/4 of the way, and we're gonna see how much more evenly this smoker cooks. And that's about a 12-foot span. After a few minutes with the damper mostly closed, we have a very different cooking environment. First of all, the air speed is much slower moving through the cook chamber, which means we're cooking more gently. We have more air swirling around in there, which means we're gonna have an opportunity to create better bark. But let's take a look at these temps. Right here, we have just over 300. Let me go all the way to the end, about 12 feet later. Let me read this temp. We are looking at 265. So we went from 125 degree difference over a 12-foot gap to less than 40 degrees. That is remarkably different. And we have the side benefit of gentler cooking and better bark formation. So if you have great draw in your smoker, close that stack down and make sure that you have gentle, easy, turbulent airflow so that you have great bark formation and you don't nuke the stuff that you're trying to gently bring up the temperature. There's one other thing that I feel like I need to address. And you might say, well, if one of the things you want is a tall stack that has lots of airflow, why would you close it down? Here's the thing, if your stack doesn't naturally have really good airflow, then when you try to close it down and reduce that airflow, it can kind of stall out. So a short stubby stack, like on say the Old Country Brazos, you don't want to close it off too much or else your fire will choke out and you won't be burning an open flame in the firebox. Now, I said in the beginning, they do affect each other, but ideally, if the smoker is constructed in a way to where it naturally wants to draw, you operate them independently and you get great results. So having great airflow that you can then tamp down, and so it's consistent at a high speed, but it's a small volume. When you extrapolate, you know, the air that's moving from the stack at high speed, it's actually moving at low speed through this huge cook chamber. So we want something that draws air and keeps consistent. We don't want something where it's moving slowly so that when you reduce the airflow, it can kind of get really lethargic and just kind of choke off the whole cooking process. That's why. So if you have good draw, you can close the stack down and you still have airflow, you still have a fire that's burning, you still have heat transfer across the grates. Now let's talk about running the intake on your firebox. One, two, six. Oh. Running out of wood. If the damper on the stack is in charge of evenness of temperatures and reducing airflow to have gentler cooking, you can think about the door to the firebox, or if you have some kind of vent on the firebox door, you can think of that as controlling the quality of smoke flavor that you're producing. So the smokier the fire is, the more smoke flavor you're going to produce, the darker the bark is going to become, all that stuff. And so what I use is the door. Even on my smokers that have vents, I close the vents and just operate the door because that's how I access the fire, that's why I add more wood, and I just use that to control the kind of smoke that I'm producing. So let's take a look at two examples of smoke and how using this door affects the quality of smoke that you make. So first of all, we have the door mostly closed right now, and let's take a look at what's coming out of the stack to see the quality of smoke flavor that we're going to be producing. How clean or how dirty you want your smoke at any given time can vary, but I'm just going to talk to you about how I use this door to get the different kinds of smoke. So if I'm cold smoking or I want something that's absolutely as smoky as possible, I close this door. So completely closed, there's a tiny bit of air that leaks in because I was a moron and I forgot to weld something on the inside of the firebox. So it still gets some air, but this would be cold smoking only really. Then for just generally smoking, if I have 28 briskets on there and I want to lay on smoke flavor at the beginning, I'm shooting for 200 degrees and I have the door open like this. So the door is just cracked like this, and it gets airflow because there's still enough pulling force to draw oxygen in there, and I'm burning a fire the way I want to. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here in a second. Or if I'm really trying to bump up the temperature and trying to get wood to go, I can open it more, something like this. This might be for, I'm trying to render fat, I'm trying to really get those things to finish off. And then if I'm just getting the fire started, then it's wide open. So if you see it wide open, you have huge flames, it's nuclear hot in there, especially with this fully insulated firebox. And those are the only 3 positions that I operate the door in. Now, on your smoker, you might find different ones, but the same principle applies. With the fire, what you're looking for is open flame. So on your smoker, maybe you need to take that door and open it more or less than I do. But on mine, this is what works. This is what you want inside that firebox. You want to see open flame, but you want those flames to be maybe this tall. On this smoker, if I open everything completely, I could have flames that are this long licking into the cook chamber, and that means I'm going to have uneven temperatures. I'm going to have nuclear hot at one end. I'm going to have not a lot of smoke flavor. It's just not ideal in any way. So by leaving that firebox door cracked like this, what that gives me is enough oxygen to keep it burning an open flame, but not so hot that I'm only making carbon dioxide and water vapor as the products of combustion. So I'll show you examples of the 2 different varieties of flame that you might have. So you want the small flames for low, consistent, long cook times where you have heat given out over a long period of time with lots of rich smoke flavor. And then you can have big flames that don't really provide a lot of flavor, give you uneven heating, and really aren't ideal for any kind of barbecue. The caveat is on something like chicken, if you're trying to crisp up the skin, then you want high heat, high airflow. And so I'd throw everything open, have that air moving quickly across the skin on the outside, really render the fat underneath and get it crispy. Apart from that, when I'm doing barbecue, I run it the same way for everything. When the door is cracked, I want to see those small flames. I'm going to open this door, but as soon as I open it, there's going to be oxygen that rushes in there. So we're only going to have a couple seconds of the flames looking the way I actually want them to look. So we're going to pop this open, take a quick look. So that's about right. In a couple seconds, we'll have nuclear inferno. It's already starting. Maybe at the beginning of that, we say good. It's like for this, bad. Yeah, this is very efficient. We're getting all the heating value out of that wood, but for barbecue, it's not what we want. With all that reasoning explained, let me show you exactly how I run my offset smokers, big or small. There might be slight differences in how far the door is away from the firebox, how much air is going through, but it's pretty much like this, and I get the same results with those small flames with gentle airflow. Let's talk about the firebox first. Here, I have it cracked. There's maybe about 3/4 of an inch of space. On a small backyard offset that doesn't have quite the same draw, that might expand to an inch or an inch and a half of space. Just enough to keep that fire in open flame, but barely. That's going to give you lots of rich smoke flavor. Now let's talk about the damper on the stack. With all my offset smokers that have good airflow, I close the damper on the stack down to about 2/3 closed, maybe even 3/4 closed, just depending on the quality of the draw I have in that smoker. That means evenness of temperature, gentle airflow, lots of turbulence, lots of bark formation, and between those 2 inputs, you get exactly what you want when you're making barbecue. That's how I run my offset smokers. Right now, on this gauge all the way over here, 295, on the far gauge, 265. That's a 30-degree difference, and that's all brisket cooking weather. It's all great for barbecue. Now, you don't have to do it the same way that I do. I've done it lots of different ways. I found this to work the best, and if you found this video helpful, let me know in the comments down below. And if you want me to do a full fire management video where I incorporate everything new that I've learned throughout my travels from other great pit masters, let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to put one of those out there too. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you want to check me out on Patreon, be sure to do so. It's the only place where you can guarantee direct messages with me. I can be sure to respond to you and answer your questions there, and you're part of a barbecue community with lots and lots of aggregate experience. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Mad Scientist BBQ. I'll see you guys next time.